Good morning, everyone. I'm here with Anthony Manacho, PA, what seems like extraordinaire. Uh, he graciously agreed to come talk to us and tell us a little bit about his experience as a PA school, and kind of everything in between. So, without further ado, tell us a little bit about yourself, Anthony.
Oh man, I appreciate you having me. Yeah, so my name is Anthony Manacho. I am a family medicine, street medicine PA. I was fortunate enough to go to PA school at the Keck School of Medicine of USC in Los Angeles as an NHSC scholar. Um, as far as my pre-PA route, I think very much like many folks, you kind of start pre-med and kind of find your way as to what fits best where your uh you know short-term, medium-term, long-term goals. And so I chose PA, but it took me a lot of different places in terms of my pre-PA route, from the emergency room to the ambulance to Washington, D.C. as a congressional intern, to the state capitol as an intern, or as a health policy advocate, and working at UCLA and UC Riverside School of Medicine, doing some community work, all of that to eventually end up at USC. And now here I practice in Sacramento, well, just outside of Sacramento, as an NHSC scholar in family medicine. And then I started a nonprofit prior to that, actually just after graduating. And we, the nonprofit that I started is called Sacramento Street Medicine. We started in the summer of 2019. We're now, wow, 3 years in, and we have 6 different medical teams going into the largest homeless encampments in Sacramento, providing medical care to the folks experiencing homelessness. And yeah, man, it's been pretty incredible. The flexibility, I think, of PA has been amazing, and I'm reaping the benefits, as it were.
That's amazing, man. And I've truly seen that. I've been following your Instagram for a while, and I've been seeing all the incredible stuff you do. And like yeah, it's truly incredible. Also, people got to know how hard you work, man. It's over here in New York, it is about 8 a.m. For you over there, it's 5, you know? So just to illustrate what kind of work ethic you have, that definitely shows it.
Yeah,
Uh
yeah, for sure, man, for sure. I
yeah.
think I think a good tip is really to regardless of what you're doing, if it's PA or anything else, is giving to yourself first. So like you said, I'm usually up super early, mainly because I'm giving to myself. And what I didn't mention is I actually have 3 little ones that I take care of. So, and that is my like number one job as a father. And so, you can imagine how much your time is squeezed if you have, that responsibility, especially as your main priority. And I think for me, it's most of my work, at least for myself, outside of clinical medicine, is done prior to the time that they wake up and after they go to bed. So whether you have kids, you don't have kids, you should be giving to yourself first, is what I believe. And it's hard to do that when you like wake up an hour before work and then go straight to work. So that's just my philosophy, man.
No, man, you're definitely giving yourself time, man. You have a full day before everyone else even wakes up. So you kind of talked about it a little bit before, but I'm sure a lot of the pre-PA people who watch this are going to be interested, what you talked about it a little before, but like, what were some of the things you did to make yourself a strong applicant for PA school?
Yeah. So, man, I knew I needed to do a lot of work experience and healthcare experience. And the main difference between, I think, medical school and PA school is that you have to have those clinical hours. But yeah, I mean, I started my journey in medicine by starting a conference, very much like the one at UC Davis. I actually went to UC Davis, ironically, which is here in Sacramento. At least the School of Medicine is, and went to this pre-med conference and got inspired, and went with a few of our pre-med, pre-health buddies back down to my undergrad at Cal State San Bernardino, and we started a conference there. And from there, we had so many networks within the community, just from folks, we had deans of admissions and all these medical schools and PA schools, USC being one of them. Kind of the advice from the horse's mouth, if you will. And so we told, we figured from that experience, we'd go and do other things. The reason why I say we is because I have a twin brother who also practices medicine as a PA, went to USC with me, and he was the first street medicine PA hired by USC's street medicine team. But nevertheless, after this conference, I went to Loma Linda School of Public Health and did some work there, just doing research. And then I did some work as a kind of an intern of sorts at UC Riverside School of Medicine through this program where we were doing community work and doing community health projects and these kinds of things. Eventually, through that program, somehow the director there was working in Congress. Like he was a physician and wanted to run for Congress. He won and wanted my brother and I to be his first congressional interns. And so we went to Washington, D.C. and did work on the Affordable Care Act in 2013, which was pretty dope. Did some policy work, and it was a totally new experience. Living in Virginia, taking the metro to DC and doing policy work that you've never done before, and then we came back, and I did some work as a peer advisor at the Career Center at my undergrad. So you can see, like, I was just getting as much experience as I could in different fields. And a lot of that still up to that point wasn't any healthcare experience. And so I knew that was the one thing that I needed once I graduated. As I graduated, I had all this experience. I really couldn't apply, which was okay with me. I think, one mistake I feel students make is the trap of, feeling like they have to go. They always have to go. They have to go. Where, like when you're really 40 years down the line, practicing for 35 years versus 40 years, there's not much of a difference, but so long as you want to go or you want to, actually go. So what I eventually did is when I graduated, I moved up to Sacramento. I had my daughter, and we moved up to Sacramento. I started working at the California State Capitol as a health policy advocate, and during the day, and then at night, I was working on the ambulance. So I would take the train down to Sacramento, downtown Sac, take it back up around 5, and then go straight to the ambulance and start getting my hours. And yeah, man, I did that for about a year and a half. Started getting probably about 1,000 hours, maybe 1,500 hours, and then I was just so spent. I was probably doing like 80 hours a week, which I still do now, but I enjoy it. It was different. But the just my time was so squeezed every week, and so I wanted to kind of switch it up. I had a bunch of connects in Southern California from the conference that I made, the conference that we started, and all the things that I had done in the community. I got an ER job actually in Southern California, living in Sacramento, and so I would fly down to SoCal and work 2 weeks worth of work in the ER, which is 3 days a week. So I'd work 6 nights straight, and then I'd fly back up to Sacramento, and I'd have like 10 days off, and I was getting paid like 3 times as much and still getting the healthcare experience. And I did that all the way up until I went to USC, and I honestly wasn't gonna go to be honest to PA school at the time, because I loved the ER. I loved my experience. I loved, spending more time with my daughter, because, from my prior experience at the Capitol and on the ambulance, I was working 70, 80 hours a week. I like hardly spent any time with her, to now this like totally flipped schedule. And I'm like living the life. but I had applied for this scholarship that they had recommended my brother and I to apply to. I was fortunate to be able to get that scholarship, and it was worth over 200K or 180K. And so I had to take it, and then I went to school. And so, it's like it's not impossible. I started my pre-med, my pre-PA path when I was 22, 21, you know, uh, mentor students as well. And I think when they're 18 and 19, they know what they want to do, or even 20, 21, 22, 23, you can still do some amazing things, far greater than I think the goal of any mentor should be that your mentees, uh, use you as a pedestal to go, higher. And so, yeah, man, it sounds like a lot, but I think that it's possible to do anything.
Hey man, I could not agree with you more, especially on the not to rush things. I would argue some of the things that made you the candidate you were, that earned that scholarship, that did all those things, was like some of the stuff you even did before you were an EMT. Like all that policy where all these life experiences you have are like invaluable. A school, you could write a personal statement on that alone. Schools would be impressed by that. Everyone's rushing to kind of get into PA school when you're 100% right. What's the difference between 34 years, 35 years, 36 years practicing? It's you'd rather make yourself a well-rounded applicant who just like any school would be lucky to have, and of course that's what happened with you. You know, um, so tell me a little bit about how did it feel when you got that scholarship to school, because that's no small feat. I don't hear too many people at all even getting money, to get help towards tuition, in forms of scholarship.
Yeah, man. To be honest, man, it was pretty bittersweet, to be real. I honestly didn't want to leave. Like, I didn't want to go because um my daughter's mom and I had separated, for and cordially for many reasons. And so I went from spending, like I said, I went from spending like maybe 10 to 15 hours a week with my daughter to like 10 days straight having her for 24 hours a day, and making far more money. I was happy, with what I was making, with what I was doing. I love the ER. They were like my second family. And so when I got the scholarship, I had actually called USC and I told them like, hey, the program director over there, Henry, I said, hey, I don't think I'm gonna go this year. This was like in August of 2016, like when we started, like about when we started. So yeah, I don't think I'm gonna go. And he's like, well, you got to really think about it because your brother's coming, you know, and it's better to start and yada yada. He get a whole spiel. But if you want to defer, like it's perfectly fine. So I, was like on the verge of like not going. And then just a few days later, I found out that I got the scholarship. And so, I had to call USC back and be like, hey, JK, I'm actually going. But uh so it was kind of like put in a situation where like, yes, you had all this money, but really to your point is like, I took all this time, I took all this effort and all this sacrifice to make the right decision for myself. And I felt uh that it needed to be the correct decision for me to even take this money. And I felt like it was because I think, at the time my daughter was really young. As much as I loved, being with her and being, spending time, I could still get this money and still spend, take loans out to fly back to Sacramento. And that's what I did. So uh I was over the moon that I got the money. I got, not only did you get tuition, but you got monthly stipends, which helped me pay for my rent in LA, and then my flight. So I flew to Sacramento during PA school every other week for 3 years.
Wow.
And then I got whatever rotations I could in Sacramento and San Francisco so that I could be up here. And And yeah, man, honestly, I tell people all the time, man, I loved my time at USC. I'm hella biased, but um, I would do it for no money, you know. So whether I had the scholarship, in fact, I had to, I had to like put my intention to go before I had the scholarship. So um, yeah, man. I mean, there's ways to pay it off whether you have whether you have a scholarship or not, but yeah, man, I'm just fortunate. There were a lot of amazing folks at USC that were probably just as worthy.
That's all. And a really quick question. You mentioned a few times you worked in the ER before you went to PA school. Was that as what capacity? Is it EMT or as like something else?
Yeah, so I worked as an EMT, and I don't know if you ever worked as an EMT, but I feel like many EMTs on the ambulance are like dying to get in the ER because it's like half the work and twice the pay. But like, yeah, so I worked on the ambulance doing like interfacility transport here in Sacramento. It sucked.
Uh,
I hated like, some people love the ambulance. I like despise the ambulance because, I don't know. There was just with the dispatchers and not knowing your schedule, I was like I'm a very regimented, you know, dude. And it was very hard to kind of keep that when you're about to get off and then you get a call and you're extended an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. But, um, I think, I eventually was like, yeah, this doesn't work. I need something like more regimented. I was fortunate to have networks in the ER that I had, served with in the community. And yeah, man, I flew down for one interview, was given the job for full time, which is like not the case. Usually like you go in and you get like part time, you get like the crappy shifts. And I was just fortunate to be able to make my schedule and make it work for my family. And I loved it, dude. Like loved the ER. Absolutely loved the ER. Um,
that's awesome.
still to this day, like I could walk in there and they're like my family. This was like 6 years ago.
That's amazing. That's awesome, man. So you also talked about this a little bit, but like if you could go into a bit more detail about like why did you enjoy USC so much? If you want to tell us a little bit about the program.
Oh my goodness, dude. That is like a hell loaded question. I think with USC, I think the most important thing for me at least was there's like this aura of a family. And at USC they call it the Trojan family, right? Like when you get accepted, it's like, okay, welcome to the Trojan family. Oh, when you come in and you're like inaugurated or whatever, it's welcome to the Trojan family. Everything's like family, family, family. And really like that is what it felt like from the interviews to day one in PA school. Is like everybody's on the same team. We're all here to help each other. The faculty from the program director down. I mean, I had many discussions with the program director that had nothing to do with medicine, like open door policy. All of the faculty and staff were very much similar. But honestly, God, my classmates were like my brothers and sisters, and we spent so much time with each other. We spent more time with each other than our families, to be honest. But um, yeah, so I would say that the culture, the environment, the idea of family, and obviously, the training was phenomenal in terms of education. I really do think that like regardless of whether where you go, whether it's USC or Yale or Western or wherever, you're going to get the education. Like you'll get the medical education that you need to get into a specialty that you want. And much of the learning, as you probably well know, that is done on the job. You have to really, continue to be a student, or you just never grow. But nevertheless, I mean, USC it was just absolutely incredible from the education, from the resources. And then the one thing I will say is folks that want to go do things in the community. I was always told, the name doesn't matter. And then, one of my mentors was the president of my undergrad, because we had to work with him to do our conference. And so he would take me to breakfast before every PA school interview. And he told me, he's like, you don't want to go do this school, you want to go to USC because I don't see you like sitting in a clinic all day, or for the next 20, 30 years. And at that point, your schooling actually does matter. Like where you go to school matters. And I took his advice, and I feel, with the endeavors that I have, I'm very like entrepreneurial. I started something before I even went into clinical practice. I'm trying to reduce my clinical time in clinic so that I can go do other things. And I wholeheartedly believe that USC has been able to do that. So whenever I've met with the mayor and Sacramento Bee and NPR and the Times and all these people, and when you say like, oh, their introduction to whoever I'm talking to is always like, oh yeah, he did his medical training at USC. He did his medical training at USC, because it gives you this like automatic authority, whether that's right or wrong, like we can debate, but I think that it has definitely helped me in my entrepreneurial side, if I could say so myself.
That's awesome. And no, trust me, going to a well-respected institute like USC definitely gives you some credibility. And you definitely sound like you milked that place for everything it had, You really got, I mean, if even whether you got the scholarship or not, you got your money's worth at that university. So that's really awesome. So now to shift a little bit. So I'm sure there are a lot of like parents out there, who have one kid or maybe want to go back to school, to PA school. Any words of advice for them? Because you were in a very unique situation.
Yeah, man, that's a great question, dude. I don't think I've been asked that many times, which I feel like should be asked, because I
Yeah.
think your family, at least in more circles than not, should come first, right? And so learning how to balance that. I think your support system is number one. Like, do you have the support to be able to make it happen? Does your program support you? Because I think that's also, very important. Does your program understand, that there are functions that you might not be at, or there are obligations that you might have, or things that are more important that even though you want to be there, your family takes precedent. And obviously, if you're always at school, you're always studying, you want to take however much time you can to be with your family as possible. But I think number one is your support system. I 1000% believe it's possible to be a parent and still go to school. I know many of my buddies and good friends that have kids now and are finally now in PA school and doing some amazing work. They're incredibly happy, but the common denominator, I would say, is that they all have a strong support system, because you essentially need that, because you have your time crunch with respect to your studies. The beautiful thing about PA school is that it's only a few years generally. And if you were looking down the medical school route, it would still be possible. I think there's like there's an essence of like time, and as well as like true fulfillment. And so like, what are you weighing the pros and cons about with respect to being a parent, versus you actually feeling fulfilled? If it takes 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, but you'll feel fulfilled at the end of it. To me, that's far greater and far more important to show your kids than to settle and not feel fulfilled and then essentially give your life to your kids. I was told, like, we borrow our kids for a certain amount of time, 18 years, if you will, sometimes, much longer, but you want to set a precedent. And I think that in and of itself, you should be the example. And if it's you going after what it is that you want, regardless of the sacrifice that you need to make, I think that is a far so long as you can still spend the time and dedicate your your extra time to be present with your kids when you can be. I think your kids respect that, and is at a far greater example than just kind of giving up on that, because you don't want to live with regret. Eventually, your kid's going to be gone. You're going to live with yourself, and you don't want to look back on your life thinking about what could be, what should have been, what I could have done if I didn't have this. But maybe if I did this, it's like, no, man, just if you have the support system, and you've kind of evaluated what is most important to you, then lead, you know.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I'm sure it wasn't easy, but I'm sure your kids, when they're older and understand more of what you do, they're going to be incredibly proud because like you do a lot for the community. So did USC do anything specific? I'm just curious. Did USC do anything specific for you as a parent? Like, were they more understanding, or did they kind of like, because you were flying a lot while you were in school? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so I mean they definitely, I mean, you had to be at class at a certain amount of, certain amount of days or whatever. But yeah, like there were functions that I missed on the weekends, generally on the weekends, because I only flew Friday through Sunday.
Hmm.
But if I missed a flight, or if I, something happened, I had to be late on a Monday or whatever, like they would do that. I would always bring my daughter into the class when I could. Um, yeah, man. I mean, I think more than anything, versus, outside of making like adjustments to my schedule, which weren't many, um, is just the support of understanding like, hey, this person has a family in Sacramento. I'm gonna ask about how his family's going. How was his trip to Sacramento? Were you able to make it out on time? You know, uh, and just being there for support, emotional support. And they did that, man. Like, honestly, God, I think, and a lot of it is the leadership there. The leadership there was just absolutely incredible, and how they picked their cohort, and the diversity there really helped me just feel like USC was my second family, and I felt like I couldn't have done it with anybody else. That's hella cliche, but it's honest. It's the honest to God truth.
Awesome. I want to ask you one more question about like PA school stuff, and then I really want to get into like your other stuff because you've done so many cool things outside of it. So like if
Sure.
you had a quick like what's something you wish you knew about PA school before you started?
Oh man, that is a great question. Honestly, the time commitment throughout, like with respect to studying, I think there's a lot of studying. There's a lot of like time commitment, and like I don't think it would change anything. I think you would still get it done, but I think that the first semester or first quarter of getting adjusted from like undergrad life or post or whatever it is that you were doing to PA school is like night and day, you know. But I don't know that I don't know that I would I don't think there's many other things. I think it's something that you just go into, and it's going to be difficult, and you handle it. That all of it is just a stepping stone. This is how I kind of treat life, whether I'm in an EMT, like I'm in an ambulance, or I'm in the ER, or I'm at the Capitol or whatever. It's like this is just a stepping stone to get to something greater that I'm trying to get to, and this is what I have to do. This is what I have to get through. And as long as you have your priorities in place, then it doesn't matter what you're going through. I think family, love, your relationships, if you have those things, then it doesn't really matter, what it is that you could be going to try to be an astronaut, it doesn't really
Yeah.
matter. But and you'll do what you have to do. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's so true. It's funny, a lot of people like for me, I overestimated how much I was supposed to study. I was shocked when I had free time.
Mm.
But like it's so funny how people just interpret things differently. And but at the end of the day, we all end up studying about the same amount of time, and it's always rough. But yeah.
Yeah. yeah, I think yeah, I think as you get older and you know you're a little more experienced, you can like you have time management. You talk to like kind of the younger students that don't have as much like life experience. You're kind of questioning like why are they doing this when they have this, and but, everybody learns and they're going through their learning curve as we go, and as long as you guys have each other's back and you're in it together, because it's really not a competition to see who can see the most patients, or um yeah, I mean it was an amazing experience, honestly. I always say like I wish I was back in PA school, like legit. I loved my time in school.
Awesome. Well, I'm about to finish, and it'll probably be a couple of years before I feel like I want to go back, but probably
Oh,
too.
that's right. Okay, you're still in PA school.
Yeah,
Wow, great.
I'm finishing in December.
Oh, wow, beautiful.
Yeah. So
Beautiful.
now another thing I wanted to ask you about. Can you tell us a little bit about your time in like Ecuador and like what you did there, and just to give the people.
Oh, wow. Yeah, man, I did a rotation in San Francisco with a phenomenal orthopedic surgeon. He's an amazing man. Um, I was fortunate enough to be able to do some really hard rotations like before I got to his rotation. So I was very confident in giving, clinical presentations, patient presentations, doing physical exams, giving histories, and yada yada. And so, I was able to make a good impression on him. He was just a phenomenal human being. And one thing that I encourage students, and one thing that I feel like has always been my strong suit is networking and finding, like, when I identify somebody who is incredibly beneficial, or would be incredibly beneficial for my future and for my goals, and somebody that I can emulate, I tend to make a relationship like, okay, I want this person to be my mentor. And from like the first few days, like I was like, this guy, I don't know when it's going to happen, but I want to ask if this guy will be my mentor. And he has been. His name's Dr. Dave Akin. He's one of the most amazing human beings on the earth. He volunteers a lot with Operation Rainbow, which is where I went. He was, I mean, we got along so well. He's very intimidating, like very like how he kind of presents. He has a soft heart, but he does have like that surgeon kind of vibe when you're giving presentations and things like that. But I thrived under that one because I was prepared from my previous rotations, but also my dad was very disciplinarian, and so I loved it. And toward the end of the rotation, he was like, "Hey, Tony, I want to, as a graduation gift, I want to bring you with me to Ecuador to do orthopedic surgery, pediatric and adult orthopedic surgery on folks who need surgery. We'll be there for a week." And he's like, "I'll pay for your whole trip, no, all expenses paid." And I was like, "Oh yeah, man, that would be freaking amazing." This was like circa 2018 or something. And yeah, man, he kept his word. Like I graduated, and he was like, "Hey, Tony, we're leaving on in June," and I was gonna do my test. I was gonna do my boards, and I was like, "Yeah, Dr. Akin, I have my boards that weekend." He's like, "All good. We'll figure it out next trip. We'll figure it out next time." And I was like, "Oh no." I was like, "No, I'm gonna postpone my boards, and I'll be in I'm gonna go with you." And he was like, "For sure." Like we went, and yeah, man, it was absolutely incredible. We spent the first few days just triaging patients. People were, we had to take multiple flights and vans and all this to get to this one place called Cuenca, Ecuador. And we spent the first 2 days triaging folks with who we felt would need surgery, and the people in the city knew that we were coming, so we were there, and people were traveling hours by foot, 24, 32 hours by van or bus, just for an opportunity to get a surgery, because we couldn't do a surgery for everybody. And the issue in Ecuador was that a lot of the things were antiquated. So these kids had like old rods in them, and like nails that weren't the same, and like it was the most remarkable thing. And uh we got to work with I got to work with Dr. Akin as well, but I also worked with a man named Dr. Comstock, who's one of the most world-renowned pediatric orthopedic surgeons, just such a kind soul. And I was able to triage with him as well, and got to see his like kind of thought process. I actually spent more of the trip with him than I did with Dr. Akin, because I was intrigued by the kids, and Dr. Akin was doing the adult stuff. But we eventually, chose a certain amount of cases that we were going to do. Some of them were very like, traumatic. A lot of it had to do, surrounding osteogenesis imperfecta. So we had to like break the bones and put them back together with actual rods. We had orthopedic surgeons from Ecuador in the OR learning from our orthopedic surgeons. And man, I hate the OR. I can't stand the OR, but the experience, and I was doing first assist. It was nuts. I couldn't do it as a career, but I think it was just the whole experience in general was just incredible. And I was inspired to like give back to my community. And so when I came back, I was actually, the day before I went, I had given a presentation at Berkeley or UC Davis, one of the two, and I had told them like, hey, I'm going to do the street medicine thing before I like literally went to my flight in San Francisco to Ecuador. And yeah, when I got back, I was like, I'm even more inspired to go do what I need to do, And so yeah, I set foot back and I took the boards, I think like a week later, and then I passed and I went to start my nonprofit.
I'm gonna be honest, man. I think you made the right decision postponing your boards. That is like one of the coolest, most incredible stories I've ever heard about like helping abroad. That's awesome. That's really something, and I'm really glad I asked you about that, because that's a really cool story.
Yeah, man. I think a huge thing in PA school or wherever you're at is just finding people that can change your life. And he truly has, honestly, God. We were in Cuenca the last day. The last day was for just like kind of recreation. And him and I, he wanted to buy me a painting from this like famous artist. And we were like in Cuenca, downtown Cuenca. And he's like, Tony, I hope you know that he was asking me about the trip. And I was just like, dude, I loved it. This was like amazing. He's like, I hope you know that you're going to be coming with me next year, because I'm going to pay for you next year as well. And then COVID happened, so we're actually he goes all over the world. We're actually going to go back to Cuenca this next year. And he's already offered to take both my brother and I this time, which is going to be amazing. But yeah, so it's crazy.
That's amazing. Hey, man, if there's any room on that trip, I'm
Yeah,
coming.
amen. That's seriously, it was incredible.
That's awesome. So now I want to end on you. I want to talk a little bit about like your nonprofit, because I did do a little research into it. I wanted to see like, it seems like you guys are doing amazing stuff. I know the homeless population is a real problem in California. It's the same in here in New York. So tell me a little bit about what you guys do, how you guys operate, and like I'd like to give the floor to you to talk about your stuff.
Yeah, man. So we take medical care to the folks experiencing homelessness, mainly because we understand that there are barriers for them getting into a normal brick and mortar. And there are folks that really need the care. I mean, the more time you spend out there, the more cases that you see that are like, this person would pass if we hadn't come across them. And so we have, I recruited a bunch of, undergrads to do a needs assessment back in 2019, just to figure out what the community needed. Generally, when you start a street medicine, or you need to let the street. I learned from Brett Feldman, who's the director of the street medicine program at USC, and he always says like, let the streets build the program. You don't build the program for the streets, because every city is different. Santa Barbara has one, and they their issues are far different than the ones in LA and Skid Row. And for us, it's different, and so we did a needs assessment. I had like 90 students just scaling all of Sacramento. And then through that, we built a board. I built a board of directors that was just undergrads, literally. And then we eventually grew like exponentially during COVID because we were going out into the encampments, and there were some medical students that were doing this work as well through a local medical school. And they wanted to continue to do this. They were just kind of appointed by the public health officer just to be doing COVID tests, and they wanted to continue what they were doing. And we were saying like, hey, well, we're doing this work. This is a nonprofit. We're not stopping. So if you want to come join with us, we joined forces. We grew exponentially from there. Now we have 6. We had 7. We reduced to 1 because 1 was getting so many services. But we have 6 different teams. They're both led by healthcare professionals. So that can be medical students or PA students. They're generally 2 of them, 2 camp leads. There are volunteers within each camp. They go to the same camp, same time, every other week. So we do, I don't know, 14 to 16 visits a month. And it's a huge organization. Now we have a board of directors, which is an executive director, medical director, advocacy director, legal, finance, all this stuff. And then we have committees that do all of the kind of backbone work of partnerships and volunteer work and logistics and supplies and all this stuff. And then we have our actual street teams that are led and meet every each team meets once a month. But yeah, and so we go in and we provide primary care services and subacute care as much as humanly possible. We care for blood pressure, hypertension, diabetes, COPD, CHF, asthma. I mean, you name it. A lot of wound care. But the beautiful thing is that we've created so many partnerships with the schools, with the city. The city just recently asked us to partner with them to do street medicine on behalf of the city, essentially, and care for the homeless folks with the city of Sacramento. And so we're in the middle of that contract, but health insurance companies that have jumped on with us, and we were sponsored for $100,000 to do a pilot work, a pilot program. And then we were renewed this year and are now doing the whole thing with the city. And so we've been doing a lot of our work on the weekends because a lot of it's student ran, it's all volunteer based, but hopefully we'll be moving our teams during the week. And so yeah, I serve as executive director there as well as one of the main providers here, but our goal is to expand pretty exponentially very soon. So we have like, I don't know, 300 plus volunteers, 45 plus leaders, and it's pretty incredible, man.
That's amazing, man. And I want to be cognizant of your time. I appreciate you giving me any of your time. I know you're obviously a very, very busy man. But thank you so much. This was incredible. I feel motivated and inspired after talking to you, and I'm sure you have that effect on a lot of people. So if you want to just give a closing remark or whatever you want, it was really great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. Yeah, dude. I mean, I've been working with pre-meds, pre-PAs for a long time, like 10 plus years now. One thing that I didn't mention is something that I started while I was in PA school was a platform to help mentor and coach pre-med and pre-PA students called Brainbox Med. We help students get into PA school, get into medical school. And so that's been incredible. Like that takes a lot of my time that I haven't really, chatted about. But if anybody wants to learn more, they can, follow my personal account, and I have all the things with SacShoot Med and Brainbox Med. And I have a few other endeavors that I'm going to be embarking on here relatively soon. So it'll be an amazing journey. And so anyway, I appreciate you having me, and I appreciate you being cognizant of time for sure.
No worries. And yeah, I'm going to include your Instagram handle in this, so everyone will get to follow you and check you out. So again, thank you so much.
Awesome, man.
Have a good
Appreciate
one.
you.